Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and today we're going to talk about the dwarfs again. Yeah, I know it's a bit soon, but many of us have been looking towards, say, a Engineer DLC or a Slayer DLC, but maybe not enough of us are looking towards a possible mini race pack, a sub-race if you will, in the form of the Norse Dwarfs. You see, in the northern territories of the Old World lies Krakadrak and a few other dwarf holds, but they are fairly different to that of the normal ones that we do know from the Kara's Anchor. In fact, these dwarfs journeyed up there and then lost contact with the Kara's Anchor. So they formed their own society, warriors, and in general practicing religion very different to that of what we're normally used to, despite that they were so close to the Kara's Anchor. Their isolation has changed them, and the fact is, it's something that we've known already for a long time. It's lore that we've had. They've even had their own army in 3rd edition, I believe. So why would these guys be a perfect DLC? Well, let's talk about this in a few ways. First up, their territory is in the Realm of Chaos map and Immortal Empires, so it doesn't have to be an Immortal Empires exclusive DLC. This could also be implemented in the same sense as Champions of Chaos did, but in a much smaller way, where it's a mini race pack or a sub-race pack. It's still a dwarf, but it doesn't need its own section in the selection screen. Instead, the Legendary Lord, or two if they want to just add a little bit extra, would be in the dwarf section, just like Village is for the Warriors of Chaos. 1 Legendary Lord is perfectly fine, 2 would be cool, but I feel like only 1 is really needed for Krakadrak. Hell, if they want to add in another one in the Mountains of Morn, yeah, that could work too, but all known dwarf holds that kind of lost contact, those who didn't go chaotic, were found in Krakadrak and those regions there. And yes, I am completely aware that that's just going to cause a few problems because the north is already so bloated, but it brings in another order race which might kind of help balance the fact that Chaos and, most importantly, Frog is going downright genocidal. Now there's the connection to Warhammer the Old World, which, you know, could work as cross-promotion if Games Workshop is smart. I have to kind of doubt that sometimes, but you never know. But in an article in 2020, yes, it's been 2 years, we've seen that the Norse Dwarfs still exist, even in the Old World setting, which is obviously in the past, but it's important that they still remain canon, as they had been forgotten about for a long time. It's not a lot, but the fact that they are mentioned and their name is on the map is actually quite important. If they're being brought back into the canon and there is new information about them, well, who's to say we can't see them as miniatures for Warhammer the Old World so people have stuff to play with, and obviously a DLC for Total War Warhammer 3. Characters surely won't be alive, but the fact is that units, you know, different types of units, yes. Like I said, it's a form of great cross-promotion, and I just really hope that CA and GW are thinking the same way. But then we can carry on to something more recent, both in lore and actually in real life. So, we've got a new lore recently for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay in the Sea of Claws that focuses around the Norse Dwarfs. It's around 5-6 pages or so. I think it's actually a little bit more, but we're going to cover all that in the future in its own video because there's a lot to cover. But the main thing is that we know that they've been actively working on retaking their lost holds. Some of them were lost to the Norskans, so you never know, Norska versus Dwarf DLC would be kind of cool. It would be nice if we had DLC that was focused around other races and not Game Free versus something. But let's leave that discussion for another day. The main thing is that we know that they're being active again, that they are re-establishing communications with the Kara's Anchor, and they're talking with other races too. Hell, they're actually quite relieved that there are humans that aren't like the Norskans that had fallen to Chaos, so they're quite happy to work with the Kislevites and even with the Empire. Now, like I said, they do have some unique units, but they're not really that unique. So in 3rd edition they had Norse Dwarf Warriors and Norse Dwarf Troll Slayers. You know, that's pretty much it. And Dwarf Berserkers too, North Dwarf Berserkers. There's not really that much. But in the future, with Old World, new stuff could be introduced, like we've seen for Kislev and Cafe. Kislev had a complete roster overhaul and is drastically different to what we remember from old Kislev. Well, there's still some stuff that is reminiscent, but you know what I mean. And obviously Cafe was, well, new. We never really had Cafe in the tabletop setting. We had a few models and that's it, but that's it. So in a new setting where new units and new armies will be needed, you know, in the form of maybe a supplement at the beginning, or, you know, a campaign book with some new miniatures, which we've seen in Warhammer Fantasy in the past, I feel like this is kind of possible. We don't know really that much about the Norse Dwarfs right now. The lore that we do know tells us that they are a bit more primal, so they're a bit more in tune with nature. They don't use a lot of machinery, so they wouldn't have access to all these guns and cannons and all that type of stuff. So already the playstyle would be very, very different, and this is why I'm saying it should work like a sub-race rather than its own thing, because it would still use warriors and slayers and, well, I'm imagining quarrelers too, because quarrelers are quite, you know, low tech. But there is some potential for more stuff. At this point, we can see new types of slayers, if anything, or maybe a new kind of lore of magic in a sense. We have rune magic, but maybe a northern rune magic. It very much depends as to what Games Workshop and Creative Assembly are willing to do, in all honesty. But I imagine that a lot of work wouldn't have to go to the units, as they'd use the same rigs in most cases, as we already have pretty much every single type of weapon for the dwarves that they already had available. So it would be kind of like Champions of Chaos in that sense, where it would be reusing rigs and animations and changing around the assets. And since these dwarfs are a bit more primal, well, this might be the perfect time to introduce the Shard Dragon as a big unit for the dwarfs. So everyone would get access to this. The Shard Dragon itself is a creature that kind of dug deep underground, and the dwarfs themselves found it, as, you know, what dwarfs do. They were able to get control of Shard Dragons too, using runic collars, so powerful rune magic, just to be able to bind them to their will, and they look really, really cool. This is something that's very highly requested. And yeah, you know, cool factor. The dwarfs need something that can move around kind of quickly. Let's be honest, they're slow. So if you got something like this, which I imagine would do a lot of damage, keep in mind that its stats on the tabletop weren't great, but anything on a monster base or above was just kind of bad for 8th edition. It's just how it worked. But yeah, this should be able to do a lot of damage. It's got a unique rule known as Wall Crawler, which allowed it just to, you know, climb over walls and stuff. It was a very powerful unit to fight other monsters or even hordes. You see, it had this rule called Rabid Frenzy, which, if you were lucky, it would increase your number of attacks by like 12, and it could do a lot of damage. It was absolutely terrifying if that happened, but in most cases on the tabletop, a cannon would take it out before they arrived. But this would be a kind of cool way to introduce something that's been long requested, because we're not going to expect, you know, big machinery or slayers and stuff when it comes with the Norse Dwarfs, but we could expect big monsters, and this is one of those ones that just kind of fits. So, I don't know, like I said, this might be quite interesting. We'll have to wait and see to see how Old World fleshes out in like 79 years, but I think it would be a cool idea if we had a complete different culture of dwarfs that was still available for the normal dwarfs. I think the process of sub-races, like we've talked about after the whole reveal of Champions of Chaos, would be a fantastic thing. The system clearly works, and Norse Dwarfs would just be kind of cool. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. I'm rather curious to see what you guys think about this possibility.